So now let's explore the particle detection. Here are located all of the methods that we provide: threshold, watershed, edge, and circle. By default, the threshold method is automatically applied. Here is the threshold detection window. Of course, in a similar way than the threshold operator, this method here is based on the height distribution, and that's what you see here. On this particular example, you have a fairly flat background and a couple of particles. So the background here in the histogram is located around here, slightly below the zero level, actually. And then you have this cursor. And the idea is that all of the region in the surface above a certain value are considered to be particle here. Of course, you can change that settings, particle above the threshold, below the threshold, between or outside to threshold. But for this particular example here, we will choose above the threshold. So you see that you can change the position of this cursor, and you see live on the left, the particle being, the region being considered as particle. So you can do it manually, like that, for instance, okay? Or you can also type in a specific number. Please be careful, this number will be set with respect to reference, and that reference can be either the mean plane, the lowest point in the surface, highest point, or the absolute z height. Once you are happy with that settings, you click on OK. And you have here the list of particles. Now, usually that's the first step. The second step is to refine that detection. For instance, you have a couple of particles here touching the edges that you might want to remove to increase the quality of the statistics. Also, quite often with thresholding, you might end up with teeny tiny particles like 1 or 2 pixels that you might want to filter out. For instance, you might say this particle here, I consider to be an artifact, and anything, all of the particles with a projected area below that number will be considered as an artifact, and you might want to remove them. So you copy this value, and then we go to the refine section. Filter, removing small particle is this option here. You paste that value, and also you can remove the particle on the edges in that same section. Sometimes you might have holes in the particles, especially when you are using thresholding, and if you want to fill in those holes, that's the section here. Also, we have added an option for smoothing the contour, especially when you have a low resolution image. Once you are happy with those settings, you click on OK, and everything is being updated. Let's bring other example where the threshold detection is relevant. So here's a new example. Starting now, I will be using the shortcut panel, where you can place the operators and the studies that you are using the most. To display this panel, you will simply need to go to the View tab, and you have this section here, Shortcut. You can add shortcuts by clicking here, and I have placed nicely the particle analysis. When you want to apply it, you click here. Now you press F11 for full screen. We can change the display option a bit like that. And you see that with the by default settings, it's the top layer that is being isolated, and that's not what you want. You want to recognize and characterize those holes. To do so, you could go back here, but you can also right-click, not right-click, but double-click directly on this cursor. And then you go from above the threshold to below the threshold. When you are happy with the results, you click on OK. Also, with thresholding, you can interact with the threshold value directly here. If you want, for instance, to get the tiny holes here in the top layer. Again, once you are happy with the results, you can leave it like that. Here's a third example. Let's display it. Let's display this surface in 3D. And you see that on that surface, by zooming in, you have both particle and holes. And you can isolate both of them at the same time with the particle study. To do so, again, you double-click either here or here, and you simply need to change that settings from above to outside to threshold. The idea is you want to avoid that peak here in the histogram, which relates to the background. And by placing this cursor here, like that, then all of the part of the sum of the surface below that cursor will be considered as holes, and all of the parts of the surface above that value will be considered as particle. When you are happy with the settings, you click on OK. This is why you can see that you need to be careful about the Z-axis settings, because you have both parts in negative and positive. This will be reflected in the Zmax. You have both negative values and positive values.